What I'm saying to you is this: did you not have to do what you had to do because of the lack of parts around you?
Right.
Wasn't that true?
Yes.
So you can't hold that against.
He could not beat LeBron James if he was to face him in the finals. These guys had to team up super teams to beat LeBron James. You team up with other stars, somebody got to sacrifice. D-Wade sacrificed for LeBron.
Welcome back to NBA Showdown, the channel where we cut straight through the noise and break down the real conversations shaping sports today. If you are tired of watered-down takes and want to hear the bold truth about the NBA's biggest stars and most controversial debates, you are in the right place. And before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join the family, because here on NBA Showdown, we do not hold back. Today's discussion goes right into one of the most polarizing topics in basketball history. Was it easier to build a super team around Michael Jordan than it has been around LeBron James? Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman, and Tracy McGrady have all dropped some heavy statements on this issue, and their words deserve to be unpacked carefully. We are going to go through each point in detail, one by one, and when you really examine the context, a clear picture emerges. LeBron James faced a much steeper climb when it came to building super teams compared to Jordan. This is not just about rings. It is about circumstances, teammates, sacrifices, and the very different environments in which both legends played. By the time we are done, you will understand why so many players had to join forces just to stop LeBron, and why Jordan's road was paved different. So buckle up, because this script is about to put every piece of the puzzle in place. Stephen A. Smith starts this debate by pointing out something critical. You cannot hold the lack of help against Michael Jordan. What he is really saying here is that Jordan's early struggles were due to a lack of parts around him, and once that support arrived, everything changed. This immediately frames the conversation around fairness. It acknowledges that Jordan, like every star, needed help, but it also puts the responsibility back on context. Nobody blamed Jordan for not winning early, because everyone could see he was doing everything possible without a complete roster. This matters when we compare him to LeBron. LeBron's career, especially in his early Cleveland years, was defined by exactly this kind of issue, a glaring lack of support. But here's the difference. Instead of people excusing it as they did with Jordan, LeBron was often blamed for not carrying those underwhelming Cavaliers teams to championships. The narrative around LeBron has consistently been harsher. When Jordan lost to the Celtics or Pistons in his early years, analysts said he needed more help. When LeBron lost to the Spurs in 2007 or fell short with poor rosters, the narrative shifted to questioning his greatness. That is the double standard Stephen A. is highlighting, even if he frames it through the lens of Jordan. This comment also reinforces the idea that Jordan's era allowed for more patience. He was given years to develop, years to build chemistry with Pippen, and years before, expectations of constant championships kicked in. By the time the Bulls were complete, Jordan had the tools. In contrast, LeBron was thrown into expectations from day one. He was supposed to save a struggling Cavaliers franchise straight out of high school. When the roster never delivered, he took matters into his own hands by leaving for Miami, a move that was criticized but necessary. So when Stephen A. says you cannot hold a lack of parts against Jordan, the implication is also that people unfairly did hold it against LeBron. This is why building around LeBron was harder. He was not only tasked with competing against tougher modern rosters and stacked dynasties, but he also carried the weight of criticism when his front office failed him. The Jordan narrative was shaped by forgiveness until his team was built. The LeBron narrative was shaped by pressure and criticism long before he ever had that chance. That is why Stephen A.'s observation is so powerful, because it uncovers the hidden truth. The environment Jordan enjoyed was fundamentally more forgiving than the one LeBron was thrown into.
What I'm saying to you is this: did you not have to do what you had to do because of the lack of parts around you?
Right.
Wasn't that true?
Yes.
So you can't hold that against.
Max Kellerman follows this up by admitting something many fans overlook. On the surface, it might seem easier to build around LeBron. The reasoning is simple. LeBron's versatility, his ability to score, facilitate, rebound, and defend at a high level makes him a dream for team construction. He can fit into virtually any system. He can elevate role players, and he can carry the load of multiple positions. From the outside looking in, it feels like if you have LeBron, you can just drop in almost any talent around him, and the team will thrive. But what Kellerman is really pointing out is that appearances are deceiving. Yes, LeBron's game makes him adaptable, but that adaptability also created unique challenges. Because he can do everything, front offices often leaned too heavily on him to do everything. Instead of surrounding him with perfect fits, organizations assumed he could cover up flaws, and that left him carrying a disproportionate burden. In Cleveland's first run with LeBron, the supporting cast was not even close to championship caliber. The best sidekick he had for years was Mo Williams, a decent player, but nowhere near the level of Scottie Pippen. Miami only worked because LeBron himself forced the creation of that super Superteam. It was not something naturally built by management. On the surface, building around LeBron is easy. In reality, it demands precision, chemistry, and sacrifices from others that are not always easy to manage. His dominance as a ball handler meant other stars had to shift roles. His need for shooters meant spacing was crucial, and his high basketball IQ meant he saw flaws in rosters before anyone else. That made him both the easiest and hardest star to build around. Easy because he could mask weaknesses. Hard because if you did not construct the roster properly, the shortcomings would eventually get exposed in the playoffs. Jordan's situation was different. He was a pure scorer and competitor, and when Chicago gave him Pippen, the fit was seamless. LeBron's all-around game, by contrast, required careful calibration. That is what Kellerman is really saying when he emphasizes appearances. It may look easier to build around LeBron, but the reality is far more complex, and that complexity is why LeBron's path was harder. He was too versatile for his own good, and that meant organizations often underestimated how perfectly they needed to build around him.
First of all, I understand why on the surface someone would say LeBron is easier to build a team around.
Kellerman then digs into Jordan's first true partnership with an all-star, Scottie Pippen, and makes an important observation. Pippen benefited immensely from playing against Jordan every day in practice. This statement might sound like a compliment to Jordan, but it also reveals the structural advantage he had that LeBron did not. Jordan not only got his all-star in Pippen, but that all-star's growth was accelerated by being sharpened directly by Jordan himself. This created a dynamic where both players rose together, building a synergy that became the foundation of a dynasty. LeBron never had this kind of luxury in Cleveland. He did not have a young co-star who developed alongside him from the early stages. He was surrounded by veterans who were not good enough or by role players who could not rise to all-star status. Pippen's rise is a perfect example of timing and circumstance working in Jordan's favor. The Bulls drafted him, Jordan toughened him, and soon they had a duo that meshed perfectly. For LeBron, there was no equivalent. His first true co-star did not arrive until he went to Miami and teamed with Wade and Bosh, but by that point, the narrative was that he had to leave Cleveland to chase help rather than grow with it naturally. The Pippen factor cannot be overstated. He was not just an all-star. He became one of the greatest defenders in history and an essential piece of every Bulls championship. Jordan's intensity pushed him, but the Bulls front office also had the foresight to draft and develop him. This combination of front office support, Jordan's competitive fire, and Pippen's talent gave Chicago a partnership that became unstoppable. LeBron, meanwhile, had to create partnerships on the fly. Kyrie Irving eventually became that kind of co-star in his second Cleveland stint, but that was years into his career. In his formative years, the years that defined public perception, LeBron never had a Pippen. That is what makes this quote so important. It shows that Jordan had structural support and organic growth with a teammate, while LeBron had to fight uphill battles without that same foundation. Building a super team was not only harder for LeBron, it was often delayed by front office incompetence, something Jordan never truly faced once Pippen came into his own.
Jordan's a scorer, yeah, you're right. But Michael Jordan, the first time he played with a single other all-star, Scottie Pippen, who, by the way, greatly benefited by scrimmaging against Michael Jordan.
Max Kellerman pointed out that the very first time Michael Jordan finally had another all-star alongside him in a Game 7, the result was domination. The Chicago Bulls did not just win, they swept the Pistons and ended the reign of one of the most physically dominant teams in basketball history. This fact is monumental because it proves that Jordan never needed endless help, stacked rosters, or manipulated team-ups the way LeBron James has often been accused of needing. The Pistons were known as the Bad Boys, and they were the roadblock to greatness for every Eastern Conference team during that era. Yet the moment Jordan had just one legitimate running mate, the landscape of the league shifted forever. The Bulls went from victims of physical beatdowns to the architects of a dynasty, and that moment was the turning point. What this shows is that Jordan was always prepared to win, even before Scottie Pippen reached his peak. He had been dropping 37 points per game in 1987. He had been winning MVPs, and he had been putting up record-breaking stat lines. All he needed was a single piece to elevate the Bulls into an unstoppable force. Compare this with LeBron James, who has consistently needed super teams and has chased help across franchises. Jordan's victory over the Pistons in that Game 7 was not just about basketball. It was about proving he only needed the smallest reinforcement to unleash his destiny. He was not hunting for stars. He was not joining the enemy. He was simply waiting for his team to grow into itself. The sweep of the Pistons is one of the clearest statements in NBA history. Jordan was ready to own the game.
Pippen couldn't play. The first time Jordan played with one other all-star who could play in Game 7, they won the Game 7. They swept the Pistons.
Max Kellerman doubled down by making an even more critical point. He explained that other than that very first season when Scottie Pippen was not fully healthy, whenever Michael Jordan had at least one all-star by his side for a full season, he always won the championship. There was no Game 7 required in the NBA Finals, no dragging out series to the brink. Jordan was so dominant that the maximum drama never had to come. He finished opponents before the 7th game ever arrived. That is a level of control and superiority the league has never seen since. LeBron LeBron James, by contrast, has needed more. He has needed more help, more time, more games, and more excuses. Jordan's legacy is about inevitability. If he was healthy, if Pippen was there for the season, the Bulls were winning it all. No debates, no asterisks, no marathon struggles. That is why his 6 finals appearances turned into 6 titles with 6 finals MVPs. He didn't need to go the distance. He didn't need extra opportunities. He simply got the job done. LeBron, meanwhile, has been to the finals 10 times and only converted 4. That record alone tells you everything you need to know. Jordan was about certainty. LeBron is about hoping things go right. Kellerman's breakdown reinforces that the difference between Jordan and LeBron is not just rings, it is efficiency. Jordan's dominance was so absolute that his finals never even reached a Game 7. That is not luck. That is the definition of greatness.
Michael Jordan, other than that first year when Pippen didn't play, when he played a full season and played with at least one other All-Star, didn't win the championship in under 7 games.
Max,
he didn't need as much as everyone said.
In another powerful point, both Max Kellerman and Tracy McGrady highlighted that Jordan did not link up with some pre-established superstar to chase glory. He developed his partner, Scottie Pippen, into an all-star. Pippen became one of the top 50 players of all time and one of the greatest perimeter defenders the game has ever seen. But that development did not happen overnight. Jordan helped raise Pippen's competitive edge and shaped him into the perfect complement for the Bulls dynasty. This is a crucial distinction because people often try to undermine Jordan by saying he had Pippen. Yes, he did, but Pippen was not handed to him as a polished superstar. Jordan endured years of carrying the franchise until Pippen matured into that role. Contrast that with LeBron James, who deliberately sought out already established Hall of Fame caliber teammates. He joined Dwyane Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami, later teamed up with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love in Cleveland, and then with Anthony Davis in Los Angeles. LeBron has always searched for finished products. Jordan never did that. His loyalty to Chicago and his willingness to build greatness from within separates him from the modern blueprint of ring chasing. Tracy McGrady's words emphasize that Jordan's partnership with Pippen was not about linking up. It was about molding a teammate into greatness. That makes Jordan's run even more impressive because he did not just ride alongside stars, he created them. Pippen's transformation under Jordan's shadow gave Chicago the defense, versatility, and leadership that allowed 6 titles to happen. This proves once again that Michael Jordan was not just a great player. He was the architect of greatness for everyone around him.
Links up with one All-Star, he never
Who
back.
became
I'm
top
just saying,
50
this idea
of all
Jordan needed more
time?
around him is not right.
Who became top 50 of
Tracy.
all time, one of the best perimeter defensive
Dwyane
players
Wade?
in history.
Tracy.
When Tracy McGrady said that if you team up with other stars, then somebody has to sacrifice, he was exposing the uncomfortable truth about the careers of modern superstars, especially LeBron James. He pointed directly to Kevin Love, pointing out that Love was the one forced to sacrifice for LeBron, while LeBron never truly sacrificed for anybody. And that single observation is massive because it highlights one of the biggest differences between Michael Jordan and LeBron James. Jordan never forced players to shrink themselves or completely abandon who they were. Jordan demanded excellence, but he wanted you to bring your best self, not dim your light so his could shine brighter. On the other hand, LeBron created systems where his teammates had to give up parts of their games just to fit around him. Think about Kevin Love. Before teaming up with LeBron in Cleveland, Love was a superstar in Minnesota, averaging monster numbers: 26 points, 12 rebounds, dominant double-doubles every single night. He was the centerpiece of his franchise. But once he joined LeBron, he was reduced to a third option, relegated to standing on the perimeter and stretching the floor while LeBron orchestrated everything. That was not a natural sacrifice. It was a forced adjustment, and Tracy McGrady nailed it. That was not LeBron sacrificing. That was Kevin Love shrinking for the sake of LeBron's system. Now, compare that to Michael Jordan. When Scottie Pippen came into his own, Jordan did not ask him to become less. He didn't demand that Pippen give up his playmaking or his defense. Instead, Jordan encouraged him to elevate, to expand, to become the perfect complement. There was no diminishing of Pippen's greatness. He grew into an all-time great defender and a vital offensive weapon, not because he had to erase parts of his game, but because Jordan's leadership allowed his talent to flourish alongside his own. LeBron's model of team building has always been centered around him being the system. That is why stars like Chris Bosh, Dwyane Wade, and Kevin Love had to make sacrifices. Their careers were reshaped, their identities altered, just to fit into LeBron's gravitational pull. And while it produced success, it also created resentment, because sacrifice in this sense was not about collective growth, but about submission. Jordan's teammates elevated because of his fire. LeBron's teammates reduced themselves because of his control. That is the difference Tracy McGrady was pointing out, and it is a damning critique of LeBron's so-called greatness.
You team up with other stars, somebody got to sacrifice. D-Wade sacrificed for LeBron.
Stephen A. Smith captured the essence of the LeBron era when he said sacrifices are when you don't want to do something, but you're willing to do it for the better whole. He then delivered the hammer. LeBron James has always been LeBron. While other people had to change roles they may have not wanted to take because of him. That is the most cutting critique of LeBron James as a leader. It means that while LeBron demanded sacrifice from others, he never truly sacrificed himself for the greater good of the team. This is where the conversation about leadership becomes unavoidable. Jordan made everyone around him elevate their game by pulling them into his orbit, but he didn't force them to abandon their strengths. He demanded greatness, but his demands were rooted in pushing teammates to rise higher. LeBron's way was different. He made sure the system was built entirely around his style of play, and that meant stars had to reshape themselves. Chris Bosh went from a 24-10 monster in Toronto to a third-option spot-up shooter in Miami. Kevin Love went from being the face of the Timberwolves to a floor spacer in Cleveland. Even Dwyane Wade had to reduce his role, something almost unthinkable given Wade's dominance before LeBron arrived. And this is exactly what Stephen A. Smith was talking about. LeBron stayed LeBron, never altering his game, never shrinking his role. The sacrifice always came from others. True leadership is not about forcing everyone else to bend to your will. It is about adjusting yourself at times for the collective. That is what makes Jordan the greater leader. He carried the scoring load, but he also allowed Scottie Pippen to become the defensive general. He allowed teammates like Horace Grant, John Paxson, and Steve Kerr to shine in their moments without suffocating them. LeBron never gave up control. That is why people like Stephen A. Smith point out this difference so strongly. It exposes the selfish undercurrent in LeBron's leadership style. He wanted the numbers, he wanted the ball, he wanted the spotlight, and everyone else had to adapt. That is not sacrifice. That is domination disguised as teamwork. And it is exactly why Jordan's leadership will always be more revered than LeBron.
LeBron James always preferred being that way. Sacrifice is when you don't want to do something, but you're willing to do it. LeBron has always been LeBron. Other people had to take different roles that they may have not wanted to take because of him.
Max Kellerman's statement is as simple as it is devastating for the LeBron argument. He said history shows it is easier to build an unbeatable team around Michael Jordan than LeBron James, and that once Jordan had something to work with, he never lost. That is the ultimate difference between the two. Jordan's greatness was not conditional. Once he had an all-star caliber teammate in Pippen and a competent supporting cast, he never lost in the NBA Finals. 6 trips, 6 wins, 6 Finals MVPs. The story is closed, the record is untouchable. LeBron, on the other hand, has lost 6 times in the finals, despite always having all-star teammates. He had Wade and Bosh in Miami. He had Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love in Cleveland. He had Anthony Davis in Los Angeles, yet he still came up short repeatedly. That shows you the glaring gap between the two. Jordan made his teams unbeatable. LeBron, no matter the help, always left the door open for failure. What Max Kellerman highlighted is that Jordan was the ultimate finisher. Once the Bulls were built properly around him, the dynasty was inevitable. There was no drama, no excuses, no collapsing in the biggest moment. Jordan delivered every single time. LeBron cannot say the same. He has been swept in the finals, he has blown opportunities, he has been exposed against teams that Jordan would have conquered. This is why Kellerman's point is devastating. It proves Jordan was not only the better player, but also the easier superstar to build around. You gave him one all-star and solid pieces, and he guaranteed championships. LeBron needed multiple all-stars, elite role players, and still managed to fall short. That is why Jordan's legacy is forever untouchable, and why LeBron's will always carry an asterisk of failure.
History shows it's easier to build an unbeatable team around Michael Jordan than LeBron James. It was. As soon as Jordan had something to work with, didn't win the finals. He always won.
What Max Kellerman hit on here is the undeniable truth that separates Michael Jordan from LeBron James once and for all. The reality is brutally clear. The moment Jordan had even a sliver of a reliable supporting cast, it was game over for the entire NBA. Think about how terrifying that is. As soon as Scottie Pippen developed into a legitimate star, as soon as Horace Grant established himself, as soon as Phil Jackson's triangle offense unlocked Jordan's brilliance, the rest of the league had no chance. Stockton and Malone, they could not get past him. Shaq and Penny, they fell before his will. Hakeem Olajuwon and his Rockets never got a chance to dethrone Jordan head-to-head because when Jordan was present, he owned the finals. Every single contender of that golden era looked like a speed bump compared to Jordan's march toward destiny. That is the difference with LeBron. The narrative around him has always been that you need to build a super team for him to thrive. You need all the pieces in perfect alignment. You need to recruit all-stars. You need sacrifices across the board. But with Jordan, it was easier. Not because he had more help, but because his dominance was absolute. Kellerman is saying the obvious. Jordan didn't need the biggest stack deck of cards to win the hand. He just needed a half-decent deck, and suddenly no one else had daylight. The entire league went dark when Jordan decided it was his time. LeBron's supporters love to play the paper game. They stack stats, they point to his all-time scoring record, they argue his all-around game makes him the more complete player. But paper means nothing if the results on the floor tell a different story. And that's what Kellerman is screaming from the rooftops. Jordan made it easier to win. Give him a good supporting cast, and history tells you what happens next. 6 finals appearances, 6 finals victories, 6 finals MVPs. That's not a coincidence, that's not luck, that's dominance defined. Jordan didn't just win, he annihilated dynasties in their tracks. He stopped Clyde Drexler's Blazers cold. He denied Barkley's Suns, he smothered Peyton and Kemp. He broke the hearts of Stockton and Malone twice. He stood on top of every mountain and burned the flag of every challenger. LeBron, meanwhile, has faced dynasties that have built themselves to stop him. That is not a compliment. That is an indictment. Because if Jordan had been in that position, no one would have dared waste their time forming super teams. They would have known it would not matter. The point is crystal clear. Jordan's bar for success was so much higher. He made winning feel inevitable. Once he had the right structure, the finals were no longer a question of who would win, but only of how many games it would take. That is why the GOAT debate is nonsense. LeBron may look better on spreadsheets, but basketball is not played on paper. It is played on hardwood, and on hardwood, Jordan was inevitable. That is what Kellerman meant when he said, as long as Jordan had something, no one got daylight. Jordan didn't just shut the door on hope. He welded it shut.
If you gave him something, as soon as you gave it to him, it was a wrap for the rest of the league. That goes for Malone and Stockton, that goes for Shaq and Penny, that goes for Olajuwon and all his guys. As Jordan had something, no one got daylight. It didn't take as much to build, like, paper it looks like it's LeBron, but the reality is it's actually easier to build a winner around Jordan.
Tracy McGrady raises one of the most critical turning points in modern NBA history. Why did Kevin Durant, one of the most talented scorers in basketball history, leave Oklahoma City and run to Golden State? The answer is chilling. LeBron James. Durant himself admitted it. McGrady is right. Durant joined a 73-9 Warriors team, not because he simply wanted to play beautiful basketball, but because LeBron James had created an environment where the only way to beat him was to completely stack the deck. But let's think about what this really says about LeBron. If you are the so-called greatest of all time, why would your rivals feel like they needed to recruit an MVP just to compete with you? That doesn't scream dominance. That screams that you are only great when you are forcing others to overcompensate. With Jordan, it was different. No player looked at him and said, I need to run to another dynasty to beat him. No superstar abandoned ship in Jordan's era to team up with rivals just to survive. Players like Ewing, Malone, Barkley, Drexler, they went down fighting. They wanted to test themselves against the best. They wanted the smoke. LeBron's aura, on the other hand, made opponents say, I cannot do this alone. That is not reverence. That is fear of failure. Durant joining a 73-win team proved how LeBron altered the NBA landscape, but it also exposed something deeper. LeBron could not win consistently unless he too built super teams. Think about it. He went to Miami and needed Wade and Bosh. He returned to Cleveland but demanded Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving. Then he ran to Los Angeles and waited for Anthony Davis. Everywhere he has gone, he has required an army. Jordan never begged for reinforcements. He trusted in his willpower and demanded his teammates rise with him. He made players better. He elevated Scottie Pippen into a Hall of Famer. He turned role players into legends of moments. Kerr, Paxson, Armstrong. He created champions. LeBron, by contrast, sought champions to carry with him. There is a huge difference between being the reason others rise and being the reason others feel forced to leave their own thrones. So yes, KD joined the Warriors because of LeBron. But the fact that McGrady highlights this proves that LeBron's GOAT case cracks under scrutiny. Jordan never inspired super teams. He inspired enemies to fight to the bitter end. That's what makes him the true god of basketball.
Well, why did KD go and join a 73 team? Because
LeBron.
Thank you. Because of LeBron James.
Here, McGrady doubles down. Durant, the Warriors, and other challengers felt like they had no chance against LeBron James unless they built nuclear weapons. They needed super teams. They needed overwhelming firepower. On the surface, that sounds like praise for LeBron, but it is actually a backhanded compliment. Because here's the truth. If you need a super team to beat someone, that means the player himself cannot consistently dominate without one too. And that's exactly what happened with LeBron. He needed Wade and Bosh. He needed Kyrie and Love. He needed AD. The symmetry is almost laughable. The reason Jordan never had this problem is because no one ever beat him once he was fully armed. He did not lose in the finals. He did not need to chase rings. He did not need to switch teams and beg other stars to sacrifice. He simply stood in Chicago, demanded greatness, and delivered it every single time. That is why players feared him. That is why his shadow still towers over the game. LeBron, on the other hand, has turned the NBA into an arms race. His presence forced Durant and the Warriors to become nearly unbeatable. Yet even when they did, what did it show? That LeBron's greatness was not enough alone. That his reign was not absolute. That his GOAT case is built on shaky ground compared to the rock-solid solid foundation of Michael Jordan. McGrady is right. They had to team up to beat LeBron. But the difference is Jordan never let it get to that point. He killed hope before it could manifest. LeBron gave his opponents the chance to believe that if they recruited enough, they could win. That gap between inevitability and possibility is exactly where Jordan separates himself from LeBron forever.
You team up with other stars, somebody got to sacrifice. D-Wade sacrificed for LeBron.
And there it is. The debate always circles back to this truth. Michael Jordan made winning inevitable. Max Kellerman, Tracy McGrady, Stephen A. Smith, they all, in their own way, spell it out. Jordan's presence killed dynasties before they even blossomed. LeBron's presence forced them to form. Jordan inspired men to rise. LeBron inspired men to recruit. Jordan never sacrificed because he was the sacrifice. He gave everything, every drop of blood, sweat, and willpower, and walked away flawless in the finals. LeBron has chased, joined, demanded, and still fallen short. This is not about disrespect. This is about reality. LeBron James is an all-time great. He is number 2, but there is no world, no timeline, no argument that puts him above Michael Jordan. Jordan was the standard. Jordan is the standard, and Jordan will forever remain the standard.